Welcome back to Founders in the Field, the show where we go behind the scenes with agency leaders, consultants, and creative founders to show you how they're building, scaling, and staying sane in the trenches. I'm your host, Stefan Bradley, and today's guest is Jay Johnson, the CMO of ExamMed. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing well, Stefan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely happy to be here.
Perfect. Let's dive straight in.
You
For
got
people
it.
who don't know your story, take us right back to the start of your journey and what made you get into the industry, and give us an overview of what your role looks like today inside Exam.
So I went to school for architecture, actually, and I ended up not getting into the university I wanted to. So I switched to art. I'm a creative person naturally. So I pursued that. And then when I graduated, I realized, I don't want to be the stereotypical struggling artist. So what can I do that's creative? And I went into advertising, actually, specifically. And then I did that, bounced around that for a few years, and realized that the physical creation of stuff was fun, but I was much more interested in the strategy, in the manipulation part, I guess, is the easiest way to say it, right? Figuring out how to convince people to get stuff and buy stuff. So I moved into that, and through a series of happenstance, I started my own business as a marketing consulting firm where we were a 5-person team hired by companies of various sizes, from AT&T down to small mom and pops. We basically took everybody, and we just did 1-year, 2-year contracts where we accelerated growth for a brief period and then moved on. And then COVID happened, and our clients changed. We started replacing marketing teams. So company would fire their marketing team and then hire us. And we, A, felt bad about that. And B, what ended up happening is we started following other marketing leaders' direction rather than doing what we do. We're doing what they wanted us to do. And though that was great during COVID to pay the bills, we sort of huddled and decided no one really wanted to do that long term. So we disbanded. And then I started doing the CMO thing for startups, and that's how I landed at ExamMed.
Okay, so do you prefer now? So is it now that you just focus on ExamMed, and how have you found that transition from having your own business to now working inside a company?
So I think for me personally, the move to startup was essential, right? Because when I ran the business, what we did was really fast paced, really dynamic. The reason we took anybody was because we wanted a diverse client base, right? We didn't focus just on health or fitness or entertainment or whatever. We bounced around and did a whole bunch of stuff. And I think the startup role gives me that level of interest and intrigue. And it's really nice not having to make final decisions. Working for somebody else to say, okay, this is what we should do. And if you don't want to do it, boss, all right, that's great. I can tell you I told you so in 6 months and feel good about myself, So it's because of that, I think it's been a lot easier than it would have been if I'd gone to a bigger company.
No, definitely. With startups, there's a lot less red tape, and you can probably move the needle fast, I would have thought.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
So could you explain a little bit about ExamMed and what the company does and things?
So ExamMed started as a telehealth company back in 2016. So it was pre-COVID. And then what the CEO did, obviously this is before I came on, is he started to pull back because he created this solution that, as he employed it, seemed to cause some speed bumps, right? And I don't know how familiar you are with the US healthcare space, but the technology developed for it is developed like technology for the business sector, right? Where it's build it fast, break it often, and roll with it. The problem with that in the healthcare sector is that healthcare doesn't work that way, right? Business can adapt. Business can deal with the fact that we logged into Teams and half the people don't have sound or whatever, right? It's like, that's not a big deal. However, if you're a doctor looking after patients, that causes a real problem. So he started to retool it. Unfortunately, the timing was a little bad, right? Because COVID happened and suddenly telehealth blew up. But in that time, he was able to work with a lot of healthcare professionals and refine that aspect of it and expand it. So what we actually are growing into is a defragmenting tool, is the best way to describe it, where we do a bunch of stuff, but our real focus now is eliminating the siloing and the breakdowns between stuff. But client would bring us on board because they have like a large provider like Epic Solutions or Athena Solutions and 3 or 4 different side pieces, right?
Mhm.
That do specific things that they like better. What we do is make sure all of those interact through a single sign-on and a walkthrough system, so it's super easy to use.
So it's kind of like the infrastructure that holds it all together.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then the clients would be health clinics, I'm guessing. So like health clinics are already all practices, and then you
Right.
come in and kind of like the glue that binds all everything together.
Right. Yeah. For us right now, the target is the small, medium practices that have to cobble things together. Obviously, we'd love to get big hospital chains and big time players, but A, it's harder to break in there, and B, the solution becomes a bigger sell. So, you
No,
know,
definitely. And like what we were saying about, I know they're not startups, but the bigger you get, the more red tape you have as well.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So,
More that you kind of like handcuffed to do only be able to do certain things and like
right.
without less freedom, I suppose, as well. So cool. Oh, cool. So what would you say the biggest trends are inside this market?
So I think it's the biggest trend that's in every market, which
Mhm.
is AI, obviously. It's the elephant in the room, so to speak, with everything, figuring out from a marketing standpoint how we can leverage it effectively while also trying to figure out the best way to leverage it in the healthcare space is a pretty exciting, daunting task because, AI is all over the place. So,
Definitely, especially like you say, it's two sides to the coin there because it is obviously AI in the marketing, which is what kind of we speak about, but also from the business you've just explained to me, there must be a lot of or like AI components to that that could be used and things like that. I think I seen on the website that you had transcribing, so maybe like when they have like meetings, like doctor to patient meetings, that they have it transcribing. I would have thought like that's probably done with AI as well. So it's kind of
right,
integrated right into that system.
right. And I'll get back to the marketing aspect of it, but when a company deploys something, some of the stuff like you might read about is AI being used to do diagnoses or,
Mhm.
patient interactions with potential prescription kind of
Mhm.
applications. And the problem with that is anyone who's used AI to do a basic search on the internet, it's really easy to get a lot of false information, right?
Mhm.
So what we're doing as a company is trying to deploy AI in ways we know work, right? So we for sure know it can do X. So we deploy X. And how that translates to the marketing side is with healthcare professionals, especially in the US, there is a deep rooted understanding that we need the technology, but also a deep distrust of
Mhm.
technology. Right. So you can have a really solid winning solution for, let's say, transcription of your
Mhm.
meeting. Right.
Mhm.
And convincing someone to test it, not even like use it, but do a test drive is challenging because they already know the demon they're using, right? It's like I'm
Mhm.
comfortable with it. I hate it. It's terrible, right? But it always reminds me of the joke years ago where I don't know if you use PayPal, but the joke was 80% of the world uses PayPal and
Mhm.
80% of the world hates using PayPal, right? Because it's like it's the one I know and I know it works.
Mhm.
I have to deal with a lot of problems and I have to overcome a lot of hurdles to make it work the way I want, but I know it will work.
Mhm.
Right. So figuring out how, and this is where to me it's really exciting, figuring out how to get them past that hurdle is where the marketing part with it becomes really fun.
It's like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Right.
And it's like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Even if
yeah,
that devil's an angel, right? You don't know that they're
yeah.
this great saving thing, but
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
fear of the unknown,
Yep.
definitely, especially because obviously they're in healthcare, which is like what we said before, well, like what you said before, sorry, that business and healthcare, there is a business of healthcare, of course, in America, but they work slightly differently. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And the repercussions of something going wrong are a lot more in healthcare than there are in things. So there's an innate distrust there, of course. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because they're like, I know this works, and if this doesn't work, then my ass could be on the line, type of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And there's the third side of the coin, I guess, because you're also trying to rebuild public trust,
Mhm.
right? Which is a problem we currently have in the States that the public doesn't trust science to
Mhm.
some degree anymore. And it's like, okay, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's from a marketing standpoint, it's really exciting.
Yeah,
From a
definitely.
living day to day thing, it's kind of dreadful sometimes. But
Yeah, yeah. Especially when you said about AI, when you said that, there is some things where they can like prescribe, to think. The problem with that is you're then having to put the onus on the patient to give the AI enough context to be able to diagnose that as well.
exactly. Right. You get all of that where, say, for example, one of the things we're playing with is some photo analysis stuff,
Mm,
right? Where you can take a picture, say, of your face and get a blemish on your face
mm,
evaluated. And we've been able to trick it with makeup or with bad lighting or with something like that in photographs, trying
mm,
to recreate the way an everyday person would do it,
mm,
right? So
mhm.
me taking a picture, I have a full photo studio with lighting and all that. And it's like, okay, I could do that and it'll be a perfect picture and it'll work every time, but
Yeah.
that's not realistic,
Mhm,
right? I need to take a half blurry photo in a poorly lit room with a
mhm,
finger halfway through it because
mhm.
that's what somebody's going to upload. So,
Definitely. It's like when two people can try and get the same thing out of AI, but the way they speak to it can be so different. And by
yep,
doing that, what I mean, and the average person isn't thinking of it because they're not using it every day. Do you know what I mean? So
right.
they're not thinking about it in terms of prompt engineering and like, do you know what I mean? Having to give it context and things like that. Like I built like an agent for my fiance for her social media business, and I had to
Ooh,
like
nice.
train it. I had to train it to be like, when she says this, she means
She
this.
means this. Yes.
So
Yes.
she could speak to it like in her own language, like give me this for this company, and it will think, okay, what that means is this long prompt. Like, do you know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's always fun to talk to people because I have to remind them that AI is built by engineers. And if you haven't worked with engineers, don't know how their brain works,
Hmm.
you're not gonna. There was a time a while ago I was riding in a friend who's an engineer's Beamer and the car stopped, so I just pulled on the handle to get out of the car,
Mm.
right? But because the car had been moving, the door was locked. And I pulled on the handle, right? And I didn't open. And I looked at him, I was like, your car, you paid all this money for this car and it's broken. And he's like, I keep forgetting you're not an engineer. You should pull it again. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing ever. It's like, but that's the engineering way. If if it doesn't work the first time, try it again. And I did, and it unlocked and opened. I was like, this is so stupid. But that's how an engineer thinks, right? It's like that's how they're trained to think. So when working with AI, you have to think that way. And most people don't.
Definitely a new way of thinking, and I feel like the more mature AI gets, the more people use it, the more that will become like its own skill. Do you know what I mean? To be able
Oh, for
to
sure.
speak, do you know what I mean? Like prompt engineering, that type of thing. But being able to translate between the gap between the average person to the great prompt end or the person who really works with AI, bridging that gap, I feel like will be in the future, and probably not so near future, will be like imperative and create sort of jobs that way as well.
Absolutely. Yep. Definitely.
So, Jay, what is working well, and where do you still feel slight friction inside ExamMed?
So right now we're in the go, go, go mode. So as far as friction goes, it's there's a lot. Like I said, working to convince people and figure out a strategy that gets the healthcare space people to reach out and try things is the biggest hurdle we have. But you make inroads and you learn from those. So it's one of those things where I try not to focus so much on the friction part. Like if it becomes a barrier, then you definitely need to work on it. But the rest of it, we just try and push through. What's working well is our traditional campaigning, which I think from a marketing standpoint is thanks to AI is going to
Mhm.
be making a pretty heavy comeback is really starting to connect well with people. We're not getting as much traction as you would have traditionally 5, 6 years ago with social media. Like we get visibility, right? But I don't know if I'm old school or business school or whatever. I'm a big proponent of your marketing should have some ROI to it, right? Not just visibility. If you're just doing visibility, you're not really doing effective marketing.
Mhm.
So when we get, 100 likes on a post or 10 likes on a post, right? It's
Mhm.
like, okay, what are those doing? And if the 10 likes leads to a form being filled out and a contact being made, cool. Those 10 are way more valuable than 100, right? They're
Yeah.
way more valuable than 10,000 because we got somebody out of it. And I'm finding with traditional reach out techniques, and by traditional, I mean like paper,
Oh, really?
phone call campaigns, things like that, that people haven't been doing forever, is really starting to work again
Hmm.
effectively, which is fascinating to me.
Hmm.
So,
So you think like maybe the rise of AI and how everything is kind of sort of opened up back to traditional methods and making it more advantageous to people?
I think so. I think so. And I could be an island here, but from my experience, and I've been around for a while, right? So there are three general acceptances of new technology: marketing, healthcare, business, whatever. Any of them, there's three basic schools of thought. There's one you don't care about because they don't accept it, right? They're like, no, it's never gonna, never gonna take it. Social media is never gonna take off. The internet is, nah, that's not gonna be a thing, right? Come on, it's not gonna happen. You can ignore those people; they don't count. But then you have the people who think of it as a tool in the case of AI, right? So this is a cool tool. Photoshop, Word, AI. They're all sort of synonymous with something I can use to do a job. And then you have people who see it and say, this can be an employee, right? And I can replace certain levels of people, low level people that do copywriting or whatever, because I can just have somebody write in prompts and it'll write a whole bunch of stuff for me or create photos. So cool. I don't need that Photoshop tech because I can just have AI create stuff. And that mentality is pervasive enough that I think a personal connection with a human being is going to come back in, at least for the short term, right? Where it's like, yeah, okay, I got your 50 emails and I got, your generated thing, but this guy over here sent me a postcard in the mail, right? Like in snail mail. That was really cool. And it made me feel like he cared about me and it's handwritten, all that fun stuff. I think that's going to make a bit of a comeback. So, and early indications with what we're doing is like, yeah, you might want to look into that kind of stuff.
No,
So,
no,
we'll
cool.
see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right. In human connections, is the value of human connections only go in one way, and I think which is up in my opinion, because everything's sort of like we just said then, automated and very impersonal. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is the way the world is going to work. But I feel like connections, being able to get on a call with somebody, that type of thing, is gonna go right up. Do you know what I mean? But
For sure.
we're going to be like we already are more, well, not so much me, I'm always doing podcasts, but like in general, we are much more starved of human connection than we would have been before. Cause like the only way if your order goes missing, for example, you email them, you speak to them through email. Whereas before it would have been, you have to phone them, you have to speak, you have to have dialogue with them. Do you know what I mean? And that's just like a basic example, but I mean, it's like that across the board now. So I feel like people definitely were going to value it. The value of it is definitely, the stock of it is definitely only going to rise, I think. Do you know what I mean? And especially when it comes to people, where you're wanting to work with them and things like that. They're like, okay, this sounds really good. But until you actually, and being able to have that conversation and do well on the call with them, things like that, do you know what I mean? And become like, relate to them humanly as well. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's only going one way, especially with the way the world's going. I think it's only going to keep going one way as well.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think the example you used of calling in if your order's messed up, how quickly do you pick up that you're talking to a bot, right? It's, oh yeah, okay. And even if it's not a bot, if you're talking to a call center and that person is clearly going through a checklist, right? I can't tell you how many times in my life I've called because my internet's acting up. And I know internet's not out, but mine's acting up. And I go through the first 6 steps of the process, right? It's like, okay, no, I've rebooted my router. I've done this, I've done all that. And I call and I say, I'm on step 6. And the person goes, okay, have you turned your computer off yet? And you're like, right? It's like clearly that human connection. You didn't listen to me. It's if I didn't have to use you as a provider, I'd probably switch because this was such a bad experience. And I think not just from a customer service, which is obviously part of marketing, that's going to permeate backwards into the whole process where it's because I think people are realizing that the email campaign they've been told by various companies that is super personal is actually not, right? It has some details in there that someone is interested in, but it's not a very personal email. It's clearly a generic email with my name at the top. And I think people are now starting to not connect with that the way they were. So it's going backwards back to, okay, how can I get that connection and convince you to be what is a champion of our product? So it's an interesting time for sure.
I think actually the point you just made about speaking to humans that are just going through a checklist probably have made this transition probably easier in some respects to speak to AI, in the sense of, because it was like, it's almost more frustrating speaking to a human that is not listening to you than an
Right.
AI that you know what you're getting. And I feel like with the tech that I've viewed with natural language processing, where they're a lot more like, the AIs can have a lot more of a human conversation, as opposed to, remember, like when you would ring your phone, people like, please leave a message. It's not like that anymore. They can have a conversation. But I do feel like I've never really thought of it like that. The way you spoke about it then, I feel like, yeah, that's probably why people will adapt to that more than they would have before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Because sometimes, like, my fiance has been on the phone to our TV provider when, like, TV channels down or something like that, and it's like, though, it's extremely frustrating, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's probably frustrating for them as well, don't get me wrong, but it can be very frustrating on the other end of the phone, where that they're just going, have you done this, have you done this, well, check this, and it's like, I've checked that, I've
Right.
checked it. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like, yeah, that's probably had an impact on how we're going to adapt to this type of thing in the future.
Yep. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that point for sure.
So, Jay, we kind of touched on that a little bit then, but how does ExamMed get clients, basically? What is their client acquisition process currently?
So right now we have a multi-pronged approach to our marketing and contact. We have ultra traditional of what I always describe as the golf outing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you meet a person and you have a handshake, you meet for lunch, and you go
Mm-hmm.
that way. You play golf together, and suddenly you have a deal. But we're doing a lot of direct reach outs give a shout out to a great company called Definitive Healthcare, which is just a giant database of hospitals and practices and medical professionals that you can go through, and they have a lot of really good data that allows us to reach out in a customized, specific way, right? We're not doing massive email blasts. We're not doing huge campaigns. We're doing some social media so that it's active. So when it takes off, we can be ready. But it's a lot of direct reach out and research and contact stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just some guerrilla / grassroots marketing efforts to get things going. So
How do you contact them? Does the database, like, contact them? How do
yep.
they contact them? Through email or
Well,
through
they have
phone?
agreements with any number of companies and providers to collect as much information as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes we have phone numbers, emails, if anyone's looking to get into the healthcare space. Definitive Healthcare is definitely a great service, right? But yeah, they have all the contact information you could possibly want for the most part. That includes CEOs and executives and high level people. But the valuable stuff is in all the other data. So patient data, capacity data, where they've talked about having trouble, what systems they're using. So we can look from what we do, we can look and say, so I see this group is using Athena Healthcare, and that's it. And it's like, okay, cool. We're probably not going to have great inroads with them because they have one solution. But we can look at someone else and it's like, oh, wow, they're using 12 different things. We don't want to come in and replace anything. We just want to come in and make sure all those 12 things work together. So yeah, so that's a lot of what we're doing now is the basic grassroots stuff.
Yeah, no, that's invaluable data when you're outreaching, I bet. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Because
for sure.
it's
Oh, yeah.
almost like it's like a qualification layer, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And build lists in there, but you don't have the data like what you have, that type of data to really see what they're, how they're working and things like that. And sometimes,
Right.
obviously, when you're on calls with them, you don't know as much about them until you actually get on the call with them. So having that type of data would be invaluable. And so, do you, like, manually then write the emails to
Yep.
send up to individual people? And yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you were to get huge, you wouldn't be able to do. But in order to break into this space effectively, we have to be trustworthy, right? We have to build that foundation where if person X talks to person Y because person Y is using us, they're like, yeah, here's what they do, here's how they do it. When you the best thing anyone can say to a potential client for you, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
it applies to everybody is when you talk to them, they talk to you, right? They listen to you, they engage with you. That by itself is is marketing that tops everything else. Word of mouth will always be the greatest marketing tool ever.
Okay.
No,
Especially because when it's word of mouth and it's been, that means you've been referred by someone. I mean, someone has built that trust beforehand. That's the main difference from when you're doing, cold, when you're going speaking to somebody cold, that trust, that bridge of trust has not been, has not been bridged yet. Do you know what I mean? But when you have a referral, somebody's kind of stuck their neck out and said, no, trust me, these are the guys. Do you know what I mean? So they're psychologically, that's already done in their head. They're like, oh, the trust is already there. Do you know what I mean? So,
I don't have to see if they're a good company or they have said they are. So, okay, cool. Let's see if they can do what I want them to do. Right. We've skipped the biggest hurdle. So, yeah.
So, Jay, where do you want to be in the next 12 to 18 months in terms of business with ExamMed?
So 12 to 18 months, we're looking to probably get like a 200 to 300% client increase. We're in a weird space because we have the capability, say, to be a CRM, like a full-on health platform, like Epic, like Athena, Salesforce, right? We can do that, but we A, don't want to do that yet, and B, we don't want them to know we're doing stuff, right? Like if they see this podcast, great, that's fine, good for you. But they wouldn't worry about us at this point, right? So making sure we're growing rapidly without exploding to a point where people are really starting to turn heads and look in the industry is where we're trying to be. So based on where we are, a 200, 300% growth rate should do that. And we'll see. Fingers crossed on that one. It's always hard to tell if you're going to wake up somebody in the giants and they say, you should look at this little company over here. So we'll see how that goes.
How do you plan on, what sort is your plan to how you're going to execute to get to 300%?
So the basic overview strategy is as we get new clients, we're actually leveraging them to connect us to other people. Right. So it's very organic. It's very old school grassroots campaigning. And ultimately, what we are developing currently is a strategy for champions where it's not us talking to you, right, and saying, hey, who do you know that you can connect us with? We've empowered you with the knowledge and you've been using us to a degree that you trust us enough that you just start going out and doing that for us. Right. And 12 to 18 months seems like a pretty good runway for that kind of growth. It also helps that we're tiny. So 200 to 300% is on paper, right? It's like, we currently have maybe 6,000 or 7,000 clients somewhere in that ballpark. I haven't checked this week. So, you're talking about increasing that to 12,000, 18,000 clients, right? It's a significant jump for us. But if I were to tell you to go from 6,000 to 12,000 in a market where tens of millions are being served, it's like, okay, that's not very aggressive sounding, but it's like, it is because all we have is 6,000 and we're targeting all these little people to get in there so that even if they switch from one to another, we're always there because they know, no, this is what you do. You connect all these. So even if we change, we're keeping you and we can go do other things. So
Jay, my last question is, if you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in the business, what would it be and why?
So which business? Marketing or healthcare?
Yeah, whichever one you want.
Okay, well, I'll do both then, because why not? Okay, so from a marketing perspective, goodness, that's tricky. I would have to say the de-siloing of the industry that has happened, or the specializing in the industry that has happened. And I think it's partially because I'm 50. So I've been around, like I learned how to do marketing and advertising by doing paste up, right? With magazine cutouts and, okay, I need to get a road. Okay, here's the road, clip, cut. Okay, I need to get a photographer, right? That's how I used to do it. That's how I learned to do it. So there's a part of me that because I learned, I was an omnivore, so to speak, in the marketing sense. I learned how to do all this stuff. It can be really frustrating to me to talk to someone, say, who does email marketing and be like, okay, so I need this to translate to this social media campaign we're doing. And them go, well, you need to talk to the social media guy because I just do the email stuff. And it's like, no, I don't need you to do the social media stuff. I need you to have the knowledge base enough to help me do the transition, right? To help me figure that out, because that's how we work as a team. I can do 80 different things, but I need someone to do these three, at least in a supervisory capacity. And I think the industry is starting to head back that way, where it's, I can't just do this one thing, but we'll see. That can be the biggest frustration, because I don't need to hire 16 people right out of the gate. I'd like to hire 4 that can do multiple tasks and understand how to transition from a print campaign. My God, we're doing a print campaign. How old fashioned is that? How can I tie that into our web campaign, right? Which is totally doable. So that would be in that. In healthcare, when you're talking in the States, it's just, and it's what we're working on, is if I could get rid of fragmentation and put us out of business, that would be so nice, right? As you said at the beginning of the podcast, healthcare as a business, right, is a very different concept that though it can excel at a few things, is just a nightmare for the people working in it, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been in a doctor's office, a dentist's office, whatever, where something doesn't work in one thing and now they have to tech troubleshoot it because the other thing can't do this one thing, right? And it's like, this is terrible, and it doesn't, and you don't have that problem in a lot of other places, whether it's a single payer option or a government funded healthcare system. You know, they seem to have a better grasp of, hey, saving people's lives probably shouldn't require 50 different pieces of software to work, right? It's like, so that would be, and that's independent of what we do, if you can believe that. It's not, I'm not saying that because that's what we do. I'm saying it because that is a real problem in this country, at least.
It's always interesting when I hear to interview people like you that are in that space, you know, because over here it's completely different. It's not like a business; it's government run and government funded, things like that. My mum's actually a nurse, so it kind of like, it always intrigues me. But on the flip side of it, what my mum always says as well is everything's always behind. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because obviously you in America, because it's that sort of business-esque type of thing, everything's kind of being pushed, which is good in some aspects, not good in other aspects. Do you know what I mean? There's pros and cons to them both. Here, you might have a hospital running off tech or software that's outdated, should we say? Do you know what I mean? But like, we're going back to what we said before, they know it works, so they're happy with it for the moment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And there's, and I have a number of friends in the UK and Canada and other countries that have government run systems, and the lag oftentimes, though lousy, doesn't apply to emergency stuff, right? It's like, oh wait, you're missing your arm? Yeah, we'll put you at the front of the line, right? That's how the system works. So if, for example, I have a bad knee, here I can just find a hospital, go get it fixed, right? There you're on a list, and it's going to happen when it happens, but it's going to happen, right? And my particular injury, I'm missing an ACL, so it's not a big deal. I can walk, I can't run, but who wants to run anyway? Like, there are certain things I can't do, but none of them impact my life in any real way, right? There are other ways to exercise. There are other ways to stay in shape. I don't have to run. So in my brain, is, though still a problem, that is a problem that is manageable, as opposed to some of the problems we have here, where because we're run as a business and because we're so fragmented, patients might not even get seen, right? I was a child of the military, and there was an injury I had, one of my knees, where we went to the hospital. And the way, when I was growing up, the military was run, depending upon the rank of you or your spouse or your parent, influenced when you were seen, right? And I'm sitting there, and at the time, my stepdad was pretty high up in the military, and I had injured myself in a way that I knew what the problem was. I'm like, I'm fine. I blew out my knee. It sucks, but whatever. I'm good. And this old guy rolled in who literally looked like he was going to die. I'm not exaggerating. He's in a wheelchair. He was hacking up lungs. It was terrible. And they came out to get me because he was a lower rank than my stepdad was, right? And I know that's just the Department of Defense's healthcare system, but that actually translates to a degree to the U.S. healthcare system, because it's a business. It's like, hey, sorry, poor person, right? I know you're about to kick it, and we'll get to you. Don't worry. will save your life, but you're going to suffer a little while before
Mm.
that happens. Seems like a bigger problem than, I have this carpal tunnel syndrome that needs to be straightened out. Why can't you see me today? Well, because, there's a bus crash and a lot of people are
Mm.
needed our attention right away, right? Those are, to me, those are two very different problems. So
Yeah.
anyway, we can talk about that again at some point if you want to do another podcast.
Yeah.
You just go down that rabbit hole.
Definitely. That's right. But Jay, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed learning about you. You've been a CMO at marketing, but also ExamMed and the US sort of medical tech and business sort of side of things. It's been enlightening.
Sorry to bring you into that.
No. I love learning. I love learning about it because it's completely different to our situation. But where can people who are listening and watching reach out, and if they wanted to connect any US, people that are listening that have clinics and things like that, where would be best to reach out to ExamMed?
So exammed.com is the easiest thing. The forms we have there, we have phone numbers on there that you call and you get one of us, right? So that would be the easiest way. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on everything, but we're not really using that, like I said, to do outreach specifically. So yeah, so the website would be the best.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, can you please like, comment, subscribe, send to a friend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen.